The blueprint was labeled classified / special access required. It showed the internal architecture of the F-35's radar-evading skin, the precise layering of composite materials that made America's most advanced fighter jet invisible to enemy air defenses. Decades of research, billions of dollars in development, the crown jewel of American military aviation. And it was being photographed by an engineer in a bathroom stall at a Lockheed Martin facility in Fort Worth, Texas. The engineer believed he was selling secrets to a Chinese defense company seeking competitive advantage. He was wrong. The company was a front operation run by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The blueprints he photographed would be in Tehran within 48 hours. He wasn't alone. For 5 years, the IRGC had been running a systematic espionage operation targeting America's largest defense contractors. 15 engineers, technicians, and program managers at Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing had been recruited to steal the secrets of America's most advanced weapon systems. The F-35 stealth fighter, the Patriot missile defense system, the AIM-120 air-to-air missile, the Joint Direct Attack Munition Guidance System, technologies that gave America decisive military advantage over its adversaries, all compromised, all flowing to Tehran. The FBI had been tracking this network for 18 months. They had identified every compromised engineer, documented every technology transfer, mapped the Iranian intelligence infrastructure that managed the operation, and they had discovered something that transformed the case from espionage to imminent national security crisis. Iran wasn't just studying American weapons. They were building copies. An advanced air defense system based on stolen Patriot technology was 5 days from becoming operational. A system that would neutralize American air superiority in any future conflict. This is how the FBI dismantled an Iranian spy ring that had penetrated America's defense industrial base and prevented the transfer of technologies that would have endangered American forces for decades. The investigation began with a tip from an unlikely source. In April 2023, a recently retired Boeing engineer contacted the FBI's Seattle field office. During his final months at the company, he had noticed a colleague behaving strangely, photographing documents in secure areas, asking questions about programs outside his clearance, expressing unusual interest in technical specifications. The retired engineer had mentioned his concerns to security, but nothing seemed to happen. After leaving Boeing, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His instincts were correct. FBI counterintelligence opened an investigation into the colleague he had identified. Background research revealed concerning patterns. The engineer had unexplained wealth, expensive vacations, luxury purchases, investments inconsistent with his salary. He had traveled internationally to countries with no obvious personal connection. He had accessed classified programs beyond assigned work. Surveillance was authorized. Within 3 weeks, the FBI had documented the engineer meeting with an individual at a restaurant in Bellevue. The individual handed him an envelope. The engineer handed over a USB drive. The meeting was photographed. The individual was identified. He was an Iranian intelligence officer operating under commercial cover as a representative of an aerospace consulting firm based in Istanbul. The scope of the network emerged over the following months. FBI investigation identified 14 additional defense contractor employees who had been recruited by the same Iranian operation. The recruitment methods varied, but the pattern was consistent. Iranian intelligence officers operating under business covers would identify engineers working on valuable programs. They would approach targets at industry conferences, academic events, or through online professional networks. Initial contacts seemed in discussions about career opportunities, consulting arrangements, academic collaborations. The relationships would develop gradually. Small payments for consulting advice that seemed harmless. Requests for publicly available information that felt like normal business. The money increased. The requests became more sensitive. By the time targets realized they were committing espionage, they were trapped. The IRGC had evidence of their crimes. Photographs of meetings, records of payments, copies of the classified documents they had provided. Refusal meant exposure and prosecution. Cooperation meant continued payments and protection. 15 engineers had made the same terrible choice. The compromised employees worked across America's most sensitive defense programs. At Lockheed Martin, 6 engineers had been recruited. 2 worked on the F-35 Lightning II program, America's most advanced fighter jet. They had provided detailed specifications of the aircraft's stealth coding, sensor integration systems, and electronic warfare capabilities. 1 worked on the F-22 Raptor's radar system, technology so sensitive that America had refused to export the aircraft even to its closest allies. 2 worked on classified satellite programs, providing technical data about reconnaissance capabilities and orbital parameters. 1 worked on hypersonic missile development, sharing research that represented America's next generation of strategic weapons. At Raytheon, 5 engineers had been compromised. 3 worked on the Patriot missile defense system, the backbone of American and Allied air defense. They had provided complete technical specifications, including the radar's operating frequencies, engagement algorithms, and known vulnerabilities. 2 worked on air-to-air missile guidance systems, providing data that would allow adversaries to develop countermeasures against American weapons. At Boeing, 4 engineers had been recruited. 2 worked on military aircraft programs, providing avionics specifications and flight control software architecture. 1 worked on the KC-46 tanker program, providing data about aerial refueling systems that enabled American global power projection. 1 worked on classified drone programs, sharing autonomous systems technology. The scope was comprehensive. Iran was systematically acquiring the technical foundations of American military superiority. FBI analysts assessed the damage over months of painstaking investigation. The technology transfer was catastrophic. Iran had received detailed specifications of the F-35's stealth characteristics. They now understood exactly how the aircraft evaded radar detection and could develop countermeasures. The hundreds of billions of dollars America had invested in 5th-generation fighter technology had been partially negated. Iran had received complete technical data on the Patriot missile system. They understood how the radar worked, how the missiles guided, and where the system was vulnerable. American allies who depended on Patriot for defense, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, faced an adversary who knew exactly how to defeat their protection. Iran had received guidance system algorithms that controlled American precision munitions. They could develop jamming techniques and countermeasures that would reduce the effectiveness of American airstrikes. The strategic implications were staggering. For decades, America had relied on technological superiority to offset adversaries' numerical advantages. That superiority had been systematically compromised. The urgency escalated in September 2024. FBI surveillance intercepted communications indicating that Iran was close to a major milestone. The stolen Patriot technology had been reverse-engineered and adapted into an Iranian air defense system called Bavar 473. Intelligence assessments indicated Bavar 473 was far more capable than any previous Iranian air defense system. It incorporated American radar technology, guidance algorithms, and engagement protocols, modified and improved by Iranian engineers who now understood the original designs. The system was being prepared for operational deployment. Test firings had shown performance approaching the Patriot's capabilities. Production facilities manufacturing missiles and radar components. Most critically, the first operational battery was scheduled for deployment in 5 days. Once Bavar 473 was operational, American air superiority in any Middle East conflict would be significantly degraded. Strike missions that had been considered low risk would become dangerous. Air campaigns that planners assumed would succeed quickly could become protracted and costly. The technology couldn't be unlearned, but the network that continued to feed improvements and updates to Tehran could be destroyed. Operation Iron Shield was authorized at the highest levels. The operation had to accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously. The spy network had to be dismantled. All 15 engineers had to be arrested before they could transmit additional intelligence or warn their handlers. The Iranian intelligence infrastructure in the United States had to be rolled up. The handlers who managed the network had to be identified, tracked, and neutralized. The defense contractors had to implement emergency security protocols. The compromised programs had to be assessed. Vulnerabilities had to be addressed. And all of this had to happen without alerting Iran that their network had been discovered, preventing them from accelerating Bavar 473 deployment or destroying evidence. The FBI coordinated with the Department of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the 3 affected defense contractors. Execution would begin in 72 hours. The final intelligence transmission was allowed to proceed. Under surveillance, an engineer at Raytheon had been preparing to send updated Patriot radar calibration data, information that would have improved Bavar 473's targeting accuracy. FBI technical specialists monitored the transmission preparation, documenting every step for prosecution. The transmission was encrypted and sent through a series of proxy servers designed to obscure its origin and destination. FBI cyber specialists tracked every hop. The data reached a server in Turkey and was intercepted. American intelligence agencies, working with allied partners, had positioned themselves to capture the transmission before it could be downloaded by Iranian recipients. The data was replaced with corrupted files that would appear authentic but contain subtle errors. If Iran tried to use the calibration data, Bavar 473's targeting would actually degrade. The network believed their operation continued successfully. They were wrong. The arrests began at 4 a.m. across 3 time zones. FBI tactical teams simultaneously executed warrants at 15 locations in Texas, California, Arizona, and Washington state. The engineers were taken from homes, apartments, and morning commutes. At Fort Worth, the engineer who had photographed F-35 blueprints in a bathroom stall was arrested in his driveway. His home contained a specialized camera disguised as a pen, $127,000 in cash, and encrypted storage devices with classified documents spanning 3 years. At Tucson, a Raytheon systems engineer was detained as he walked to his car. His personal laptop contained complete specifications of Patriot missile guidance algorithms, information that should never have left the secure facility. At El Segundo, 2 Boeing engineers were arrested simultaneously at adjacent homes in the same suburban development. They had been recruited together by an Iranian handler who had correctly identified their friendship as a vulnerability. By 7 a.m., all 15 engineers were in FBI custody. The Iranian handler network was rolled up simultaneously. FBI teams executed warrants against 8 individuals identified as Iranian intelligence officers operating under commercial cover. In Los Angeles, a man posing as an aerospace consultant was arrested at his office. His files contained detailed profiles of potential recruitment targets. Engineers at defense contractors throughout California assessed for vulnerabilities in access. In Houston, a woman operating a technology import-export company was detained. Her business was a front for moving payments to recruited sources and extracting stolen technical data. In Washington, D.C., an individual with diplomatic connections was detained in a coordinated action with State Department security. His role had been coordinating the network's activities and maintaining communication with Tehran. In New York, Chicago, and Seattle, additional handlers were arrested at homes and businesses. The Iranian intelligence infrastructure that had managed the defense contractor penetration was destroyed. The interrogations revealed the full scope of the damage. Several engineers attempted to minimize their espionage. One claimed he had only provided unclassified marketing materials. Forensic analysis of his devices showed hundreds of classified documents photographed over 4 years. Another insisted he believed he was working for a Chinese company, not Iran. Encrypted communications showed explicit discussions of IRGC handlers and Iranian military applications. Others cooperated immediately, recognizing that their situation was hopeless. They described the recruitment process, the gradual escalation from innocent contacts to serious espionage, the payments that accumulated until they felt impossible to refuse, the threats that emerged once they tried to extract themselves, and they described what they had stolen. The damage assessment would take years to complete, but preliminary analysis indicated that Iran had acquired technical data worth billions of dollars in American research and development, and had already incorporated much of it into operational weapon systems. Defense contractors implemented emergency security protocols. The 3 affected companies, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing, conducted comprehensive internal investigations. They reviewed access logs, analyzed data patterns, and identified every program the compromised engineers had touched. The findings were disturbing. Several engineers had accessed programs beyond their official assignments, using credentials and relationships to obtain information they shouldn't have had. Security protocols that should have detected this access had failed. The companies implemented enhanced monitoring, revised access controls, and conducted security retraining for thousands of employees. The Defense Department imposed new requirements on contractor security programs. Continuous evaluation would replace periodic reinvestigation. Financial monitoring would be enhanced. Counterintelligence cooperation would be strengthened. The vulnerabilities couldn't be completely eliminated, but the obstacles to future penetration could be significantly raised. The Bavar 473 air defense system became operational on schedule. American intelligence watched from satellites as the first battery was deployed at a military installation outside Tehran. The system represented a significant advancement in Iranian air defense capabilities, built on stolen American technology. The deployment couldn't be prevented. The technology had already been transferred. The damage was done, but the ongoing flow of improvements and updates was severed. The engineers who had been providing calibration data, software updates, and performance enhancements were in federal custody. The handlers who had managed the intelligence flow were arrested or fled. Bavar 473 would operate with whatever technology Iran had already acquired. It would not receive the continuous improvements that would have come from ongoing espionage. American military planners adapted their assessments. New tactics were developed to address the upgraded Iranian capabilities. Countermeasures were prioritized for development. The strategic situation had changed. But it would have been far worse if the spy network had continued operating. The prosecution of the 15 engineers proceeded through federal courts. The charges were severe: conspiracy to commit espionage, transmission of classified defense information to a foreign government, and theft of trade secrets. Several charges carried potential death penalties. Defense attorneys attempted various strategies. Some argued entrapment, that Iranian handlers had manipulated vulnerable individuals into espionage. The evidence showed willing participation over extended periods, with defendants actively seeking additional classified information to sell. Others claimed the information wasn't actually classified or damaging. Expert testimony from defense officials detailed the catastrophic national security implications of each technology transfer. Several defendants negotiated cooperation agreements, providing testimony against Iranian handlers in exchange for reduced sentences. 12 defendants ultimately pleaded guilty to various charges. 3 went to trial and were convicted on all counts. Sentences ranged from 18 years to life in federal prison. The most severe sentences went to engineers whose stolen technology had directly contributed to Iranian weapons development. The 8 Iranian intelligence officers faced separate prosecution. Their cases were more complex legally. Some claimed diplomatic connections that complicated arrest and prosecution. Others challenged the evidence collection methods used against them. All were ultimately convicted. 5 received sentences of 15 to 25 years in federal prison. 2 were exchanged in a prisoner swap with Iran, a controversial decision that returned them to Tehran in exchange for American citizens held on fabricated charges. 1 was expelled rather than prosecuted, a diplomatic compromise that avoided complications with allied countries involved in the investigation. The legal outcomes were imperfect, but the intelligence network was destroyed. The families of the convicted engineers faced their own devastation. Spouses discovered that their partners had been leading double lives for years. Children learned that their parents had betrayed their country for money. Communities were shocked to learn that neighbors they had trusted were traitors. Several families faced financial ruin. Assets purchased with espionage payments were seized by the government. Legal fees consumed savings. The stigma of espionage made employment nearly impossible. The human wreckage extended beyond the courtroom. The defense industry implemented lasting changes. The penetration of America's largest contractors had exposed systemic vulnerabilities. Engineers with access to the most sensitive programs had been recruited, managed, and paid for years without detection. New security protocols emerged. Continuous monitoring of employee financial situations replaced periodic checks. Enhanced counterintelligence training became mandatory for employees with access to classified programs. Insider threat programs were established to identify concerning behaviors before they escalated to espionage. The relationships between contractors and the FBI changed. Information sharing improved. Suspicious contacts were reported more quickly. Joint exercises simulated penetration attempts. The adversarial dynamic that sometimes characterized government-contractor relationships shifted toward partnership. The strategic implications of the espionage extended for decades. The technologies stolen by the network would inform Iranian weapons development for years. The Bavar 473 system was just the first application. Future Iranian fighters, missiles, and defense systems would incorporate elements derived from American designs. American forces would face adversaries equipped with weapons based on American technology. The billions spent developing the F-35, the Patriot system, and other advanced weapons had been partially transferred to a hostile nation. The technological advantages those systems were meant to provide had been diminished, but the network's destruction prevented further damage. The ongoing flow of updates, improvements, and new technologies was severed. Iran was frozen with whatever they had already acquired. Future American developments would remain secret. The damage was real, but it was contained. The FBI agents who worked Operation Iron Shield understood both the tragedy and the success of their investigation. They had failed to prevent 4 years of espionage that compromised some of America's most sensitive military technologies. But they had prevented future compromise. They had demonstrated that even sophisticated foreign intelligence operations could be detected and destroyed. They had sent a message to potential traitors that espionage would be discovered and punished. And they had protected the next generation of American weapons from the same fate. The engineers at defense contractors who continued their work would do so under better security protocols. The innovations they developed would remain protected. The advantages they created would serve American forces rather than their adversaries. Iran continues to target American defense technology. The recruitment approaches continue. The probing of vulnerabilities continues. The search for engineers who might be compromised continues. The next network is already being built. Somewhere, right now, an Iranian intelligence officer is cultivating a relationship with a defense contractor employee, offering consulting opportunities, building trust, preparing to make the ask. And somewhere, an FBI counterintelligence agent is watching, identifying the patterns, monitoring the contacts, preparing to prevent another catastrophic penetration. That's where the next investigation begins. That's how America's technological edge will be protected. This is what the FBI does every day. Whether you know it or not,